Yes, everybody, welcome back to Full Time Devils. My name is Stephen Howson, today joined by Karthik from Twitter, James, and also Jamie. What's happening, lads? You all right?
Good, mate. All good.
Karthik from Twitter, you already went there after 10 seconds. Are you bored of that now? Because like your university's calling you it, your mates are calling you it. It's became like your
UCFB are calling him it.
They did it on like they had a thing where they were posting people's pets. So I posted mine and they just replied, "Oh my god, it's Karthik from Twitter." I'm just like, for fuck's sake.
Is everyone absolutely going stir crazy with lockdown?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I did see something saying that football needs to start at the bottom up rather than top down when it returns. I saw that this morning, which I totally agree with. There's the French league is now cancelled, and they've also said that Paris, if you want to fuck about and try and play in the Champions League as well, you ain't doing that in France. So I think Paris Saint-Germain are potentially looking at whether or not they can go and play matches on neutral ground or abroad somewhere if they're able to compete it. Holland has obviously cancelled and null and voided their league. Only Germany and is it Austria potentially have said they're going to try and come back. But I did read yesterday that Poland have actually put a date on it of, I think, May 29th, and it'll be completed by sometime in July, 19th of July, I think I saw. Do we think that the Premier League are going to follow that suit, or do we think the Premier League are going to follow the lead of the likes of France and Holland?
I think they're too interested in the money. I think that's the thing that's playing on everyone's mind at the minute. Like this idea that we need to get the season finished. Like, I just think it's a bit daft in the current climate. Like surely everything's pointing towards just being sensible and just voiding the season off.
Well, it's the testing thing as well that's annoying me. I mean, in Spain, you saw it with Real Valladolid. Actually, the players refused to take tests because when you've got NHS frontline staff workers that aren't getting tests, but then you've got footballers that are giving them, it's just something wrong about that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not right at all in the slightest. That anything that's diverting from people being able to get tested and treated at the moment, it just isn't right. You know, if a footballer goes down injured and ends up having like a serious injury, has to go to hospital, then that's taken away from people who've got this disease, or it's taking resource away from fighting this disease, and it literally could result in people dying. I think this country's sort of not been overrun in the manner that we expected, and that's probably down to the lockdown that we've experienced for the last 6.5 weeks. But that's not to say that as soon as anybody starts to come out, or as soon as they start to slacken that you're not going to see a big increase, because you are. And I think that the fact that we've got all these Nightingale hospitals which have been built, and people are complaining that they're not being used at the moment. Like, no, good, because when they get used, we're in the shit. So. Yeah. I think what we've done is we've created capacity, which was much needed, because I almost feel like they're going to go, right, okay, industry needs to restart a little bit now, and you need to start going, getting out and making things happen. And once that happens, I do expect there's probably going to be another surge of cases.
Do you think the styles to the Premier League? Because in France, we're seeing with Canal Plus, they're saying to Liga, basically saying, if you don't fulfil your fixtures, then we're just going to take the TV money off you. And you could have a situation here where we had with ITV Digital, where basically the clubs don't get the TV money, and we end up with sides going bankrupt.
I think we could. I think one of the reasons the Premier League has, if you look at the minutes of every meeting, the nulling and voiding of the season hasn't been on the table at all from the Premier League, which is bollocks. Like at some point, someone must have gone, "Hey lads, everyone else is null and voiding this. Should we not be even considering it ourselves?" The fact that they've just ignored that option tells me that because these meetings are minuted, someone's playing a legal game here. Because surely at the start, that first meeting, someone should have gone, can we null and void this? That should have been at least a question. But if they end up going into litigation with Sky over, let's face it, it's like 800 million a season across the league.
Yeah.
If they end up going into litigation with the league and with Sky, they can say, well, at our first meeting, we didn't even talk about it. At our second, third and fourth meetings, we didn't even talk about nulling and voiding it. So they will be able to demonstrate that they did everything in their power to be able to resume football, and it was totally out of their hands. Pay us our fucking money, you slags.
Do you think the Scousers could sue Liverpool? Could sue the Premier League if they don't win the league? Do they just
anyone could?
Yeah, right. We're going to sue you.
Under what pretense are you suing the Premier League?
Well, I think it's different for Liverpool because they haven't actually won the league. But in Scotland, we're seeing it where they've just decided that teams are going up and down randomly. But you can probably see a situation. I think it's different because they haven't actually won the league. But if they were 20 points clear and were going to win the title, then they might have a case on their hands. But I think you are probably going to see it if the league does get null and voided like we're seeing in Eredivisie and in Liga, that you are probably going to get some sort of counter argument from Liverpool, whatever that is.
I think the null and voiding it is the most litigation-proof method of doing it because, like I said, if you just go, right, okay, Villa, you're relegated, Norwich, you're relegated, they'd have been like, well, we had a chance to, that's got enormous financial implications for those clubs. If you say, Leeds, you're promoted, X, you're promoted, whoever, you're all promoted. Well, they're not promoted. They haven't achieved it. The season runs for 38 games. It's not only an opportunity to gain points every time you step out onto the pitch. It's also an opportunity or there's a potential for you to lose points or be fined points or to play an ineligible player and be deducted points. So there's the reason that those 38-game windows exist and why football doesn't get called off at half-time when teams are 3 and 4-0 ahead is because you have to see it out. You have to complete it. That's what sporting integrity is all about. What's the odds that Liverpool don't win the league now? Ridiculous. They're probably like 1,000 to 1 that they don't win the league. But there will be a mathematical equation that says, here's how they don't win the league. And because of that, because they haven't actually won the league, you can't just award them the league. And if you do, they will never hear the end of it. I'll make a vow on that.
my other issue with it being is that if we end up in a position where English football sort of rushes back to get back to playing games, even if it's behind closed doors or whatever, we're still in a position where people are like socialising and things like that. What happens if one of them contracts the coronavirus, and what happens if one of them dies? Does that go down as sort of corporate manslaughter?
It's not just footballers as well. It's TV crews, it's journalists. When they say behind closed doors, you're looking at more about 300-400 people in the stadium.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, if you think, and it's a lot of people to be mingling together at a time when we could still, like we're saying, we could still be facing a second wave of the virus.
We're probably going to face a second wave of it naturally because it's supposedly it's a flu-like thing anyway. So you're going to expect more of that come colder weather. So we're hitting like the best time of year now, like April into May, where it's lovely weather. So you're probably going to see a bit of a natural drop off of it anyway. It was always going to spike, and if that spike just happens to hit where, let's say it's September, and they go, right, okay, we're down to less than 100 deaths a day. Fucking hell, it's still 100. If there's anything killing 100, if there was a serial killer killing 100 people a day, do you think everyone would be like, don't worry about it, just crack on? But I reckon it'd probably be a threshold like that, like 100 deaths or less after 2 weeks concurrent. Yeah, crack on, get out there again. But I reckon once you do, I think stadiums for concerts and for sport are the last thing that comes back. I don't know how you mitigate this with, like, let's say you're a League Two or a conference side and you've got somewhere in the region of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 that are watching you. What's the cutoff? 75,000 at Old Trafford's one thing, but where's it dangerous? And if you're saying it's got to be 300, 400 or less, who's deciding who the fuck they are? You're
going to get a situation whereby, like, there's an extra person inside the stadium means the thing has to be played behind closed doors. It's going to be like almost like in schools where you've got like kids that are eligible for free school meals, and then you've got like the kid whose mum owns like an extra £3 and then can't get them. You're going to get sort of stupid situation like that.
People are finding all sorts of crazy. Like my nana was complaining. One of my cousins is a single parent. She had to take a daughter with her to do some shopping a couple of weeks ago. This is when the lockdown first sort of started, and the rules in the supermarket is no kids are allowed, which is just a good idea. Keep kids away because kids like to fucking run off and do all sorts of stuff. She's like, well, I'm a single parent. And my nana was complaining, like, they don't know what they're doing. I was like, of course they don't know what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. literally, this is unprecedented. It's never happened before. Like, I don't think they did it maliciously, and I'm sure there's hundreds of cases like that. What about like a single parent who's got like 5 or 6 kids? Someone will probably see them in Tesco or wherever, and they'll be like, "Look at the state of this, all these kids." But you can't leave them at home. You can't leave them with family. What the fuck are they supposed to do?
It's like, when the Daily Mail are having a go at everyone for going to work and not socially distancing in that. It's like, if your boss is making you go to work and you've got like food to put on the table, what can you do about it? You're not going to like say no to him, are you? Because you'll lose your job. So
yeah. I wonder if it'd be considered unfair dismissal if you was like, I can't come in, mate. I don't know. There's probably going to be some tests of that, I imagine, coming soon.
Yeah, they opened up a thing, didn't they? Some section of the government turned around and said that if you feel like your employer's being unfair and forcing you to come to work at this time, you can report them to us anonymously, and we'll investigate it. Because realistically, like 90% of the infrastructure across the country can be operated from home. Like if you think like all these businesses that are now discovering, hang on, we actually can operate quite successfully from home. It's a big bonus. But obviously, if the big bosses, they don't give a fuck about it because they're comfortable anyway. They can stay at home. But,
that's when they get the idiots on the street, don't you? Just recording people going, "Oh, you're not an essential worker. What are you doing?" Like,
that video that went around Twitter a few weeks ago, and it genuinely made me so angry. With those lads sticking up the 5G masts. And that woman went and videoed them and was saying these caused coronavirus. And honestly, man, nothing's infuriated me more. Man.
I mean, okay. There's actually a really good mini documentary on Netflix about the coronavirus, which is well worth checking out. I think it only came out a couple of days ago. It's not that pandemic one, which is like just a real generic virusy type thing, but there's one, I think it's called Coronavirus Explained, or what's happening with the coronavirus. Well worth checking out.
You see that bloke who changed his Wi-Fi router, the name of it, to like 5G coronavirus.
I've got a lot of, COVID-19 test, was it, or something like that? I've got a lot of time for that level of trolling. Has everyone been watching the Michael Jordan documentary?
No, I need to start that.
Nope.
Mate, just fuck off now and go watch it. It's so good.
Right, I tell you that was something that I was good that I watched yesterday. Right, Robinson, the fellow who played for Liverpool, that actually sadly recently died. When he was over in Spain, he actually did like a really good documentary series, and they're all on Vimeo with English subtitles. And he did a really good one about Spain winning the World Cup in 2010, and it's a bit like ESPN 30 for 30 meets like the official World Cup films. It's really good.
All right, that might be worth checking out. Send us a link for that, actually. In fact, put the link on Twitter. Send it to me on Twitter, and I'll retweet it for everyone who wants to go check that out, because that sounds like a good one. Have you been watching much documentaries since you've been locked in?
Yeah, I've watched loads. I've actually been reading more, actually. I read a good book about, when Beckham went to the Galaxy for a bit. His like first season there, where he basically had like a massive argument because he was earning like something crazy like 5 million a year, and there were other players in the team who were on like 12 grand. And everyone was getting really pissed off with him. She was going to like England for like a pointless friendly, going to China to do like the Olympic opening ceremony, and flying back to play a game the following day. And he was just like getting injured all the time, like not trying and everything. And then he like went out on loan to Milan in like a strop. But then when he came back, there were all these banners like asking for him to leave and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you don't really hear much of that over
No.
here. Yeah. All right, I thought someone was going to jump in. No, man. Yeah, I think someone that's going to be coming out the other end of this as a winner is Netflix, and any other place that's been doing documentaries. I started watching the City one yesterday, just to see. Quite interesting.
Is it as like UAE propaganda as everyone says it is?
No, but it's certainly quite favourable to them. It's not full on propaganda like you would expect. Like imagine an MUTV documentary. Like I think that'd be worse.
MUTV do good documentaries. I mean, like When the Floodlights Fade, that was interesting. Like following Fabian Barth as a running.
Oh yeah, but they don't do anything like that on the current team. And if they do, it's all very, very positive, isn't it?
Well, I think there's just been loads of cuts at United, especially in that department as well, which is why we see now like the content mainly just rolls around like Skyping people they've got in their like phone book and calling Jason Manford to see how he is.
When's that Spurs one coming out?
I think they're still. Wasn't it meant to finish with the end of this season?
I mean, what's left? Just release it.
I think they probably want some sort of conclusion of the lockdown, don't they? Or Jose to get arrested for trying to train everyone in the park.
Yeah, what was all of that? Why have you done that?
Typical
I have no
Mourinho, though,
idea.
isn't it? That's things like exact thing that you'd expect him to do during this situation. Like, I think people think he's past it, but he's still got that sort of shithousery in him. And I do kind of miss that in our. Although I prefer Solskjaer as a manager, the press conferences with Mourinho and Van Gaal were quite something to behold. Probably more entertaining than football at times.
Ollie's been tried and trained by MUTV. Like, I can almost tell you what he's going to say for every question that he gets asked.
But that's kind of good in a way, because then you don't want him to become the whole thing then, because you look at Mourinho. I mean, that pre-season tour when we went to America, it basically just destroyed the confidence of all the players.
I mean, there's two ends of a spectrum, and I don't think either are the right. I don't think Solskjaer being just constantly overly positive is right. I would like him to call someone a cunt at some point, which I know he does in training. I know he's ruthless in training. I know he's ruthless man to man, and I know that whatever he says he's saying to people isn't always the case. And I know that he's actually very, very hard on people at the club, but publicly it's fucking boring almost. And maybe that's a great thing. Maybe Fergie's told him, don't give him anything. Just talk bollocks. Doesn't matter. Just fulfill your contractual obligation to talk to these pricks, and then fuck off and go and tell the players what you're going to tell them in the first place. The problem is, you get scenarios like last week where Solskjaer came out and was like, we're going to exploit the transfer market. We've got loads of cash. Someone in the finance department at United was like, fucking hell. Like, how are we supposed to negotiate when you told everyone we're loaded? Get Woodward out. And then they get Woodward out and he's like, oh, yeah, no one's got any money. And then people lose their mind at both things. Yeah. The truth's probably in the middle somewhere. Like, yeah, maybe the coronavirus stuff doesn't affect us as a club financially as much as others, but we also don't want to get rinsed.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of him being too positive, I think everyone looks at him and goes, I mean, the way, obviously the whole baby-faced assassin thing, everyone looks at him and thinks, oh, he's just a nice guy. He doesn't have a rough side to him, but we don't know that. No one's in training with him.
Watch his tackle on Rob Lee and tell me that he's not a rough guy.
Someone said that baby-faced assassin nickname wasn't because of how good he was as a striker. It was because of how much of a fucking ruthless cunt he is.
I thought it was like a child in his face.
He did look young into his 30s, but like, yeah, apparently it's because of how ruthless he is when it comes to, dealing with people. And we all saw bits of him training at Mulder, at people like that. That was good. And obviously it never worked out for him at Cardiff, but I think tangibly, if you look at, actions speak way louder than words for me. He might have been saying in the press conferences, I offered Ashley Young the chance to stay. He's out the door. Fellaini, what a great player. He was out the fucking door. Yeah. Sanchez could come here and really shock people. He's got to say that. He's trying to fucking keep the resale value of him. If he goes, I tell you what, he won't even get any under 23s. Who's going to buy him? And then you're lumbered with 500K.
I think people are really, really unfair at Solskjaer at his time at Cardiff, because people forget it's like, he relegated Cardiff. No, he relegated a side that had an owner that was absolutely mental. Changed the colour of the kit, changed the badge, sacked a manager because he didn't like him, and then Solskjaer was expected to
He did get more points per game than Malcolm Mackay did as well. In that season.
I think it's really unfair how people sort of bracket him as this sort of like the only thing he's won is a Norwegian league. Well, so what? I mean, Guardiola just managed Barca B before he became the manager of the Barcelona team. You look at Zidane, he only managed Real Madrid's B team before he became their manager. You don't need experience at a top level to become a good manager.
No, I also think that the way that Solskjaer gets treated over the fact that he manages in the Norwegian league, it's still fundamentally what's managing. It's managing the personalities, the expectations of the players, the fans, the board, and all that sort of stuff. Fergie said to him, didn't he? I think it's in one of Fergie's books. It was a real mistake for Solskjaer to go there. But there he went, and hopefully he learned from it.
He did a really good job at the reserves as well, actually, in those 2 seasons where it was him and was it Warren Joyce, I think, that was the
and Brenny Mullenstein. I think had something to do with that.
I mean, it was a good crop of players that he brought through there. I mean, that was what you had: Welbeck, Possebon. Well, no, but people say that about Possebon, like laugh at him, but he was actually really good when he first came from Brazil. It was that the Manchester Senior Cup final that he played brilliantly in, got 2 assists, and then he just had a really bad injury against Middlesbrough, and it just knocked his confidence completely.
He played very well in that game against Middlesbrough before Pogatex fucking ended him. Yeah, he was looking bright. He was like
Fred.
No, I'd say more like a Fabregas, probably.
He's more like Brian Robson, I'd say. He had that sort of vibe about him. He wasn't obviously as good as Brian, but he played in that similar style. He wasn't a typical Brazilian number 10, but at the same time, he wasn't like an anchor man. He played sort of as a 6.
Yeah, I think it reminded me a lot of Fabregas in terms of like, he'd play it nice and neat and keep it on the floor. He was deeper than than obviously wasn't a number 10. Yeah, he was deeper than that. But he looked like a tidy player. We have quite a few of them tidy players that come through, but obviously he didn't ever fucking recover from what happened. I think he went and played in Bahrain.
No, played it. So he went back to Santos in Brazil, won Libertadores there, but was never really in the squad. And then he went to Italy, barely got a game, and then he ended up in Vietnam for Ho Chi Minh.
I'm just amazed by how you know this.
Yeah,
I'm sure he ended up in Bahrain.
You writing his biography?
I actually did write 2,500 words on him, which is why I know so much. I'm going to plug this here. If you do want to read my article on Rodrigo Possebon for the Football Chronicle, then
I'm positive he ended up in Bahrain because I'm sure I got told about it when I went over there.
Well, anyway, do you about Dong Fangzhou? He's another one, right? Went back to China, ended on some reality TV program. Now he's like got a different name apparently, and he's had a plastic surgery done on his face.
What? Yeah, hang on, he played for Al Rafah in Bahrain.
Right.
It's on transfer marks.
Sorry, he's had plastic surgery done.
Yeah.
Why?
Dong Fangzhou's had plastic surgery apparently.
He's also had a guard of honour from John Terry.
Yeah.
I got an unfollow because I made a joke about that. I said, imagine being John Terry and getting having to form a guard of honour for Dong Fangzhou, and someone went, "Oh, that's disrespectful." Unfollowed. I went, all right.
Do you think United could do with having like another feeder team in the same way that we did with Antwerp? Because Fangzhou went there, I think, and scored like 20 goals in their season. But I think the reason that ended was there was like some fight on the pitch and it ended up in like a legal dispute. Was that not it?
No, that was Danny Higginbottom and Ronnie Warwick. That.
Yeah.
He came on my podcast and explained what happened in that. And it sounds like there was a little bit of jealousy at Antwerp getting United players on loan, and a referee lied in his match report. They both got told they were signed die, which means you'll never play football again for anyone. He said, and they both immediately got sent home from Antwerp. So what happened was, I think Warwick got sent off or something and was arguing with the referee. And he said he was arguing with him. He said, but he didn't put his hands on him. He said, and it was getting pretty fucking heated. And Danny come in, just separated him and dragged Danny Warwick away. He said, and then when they got the referee's report, they'd hit him, they'd fucking thrown a chair at him, they'd done all sorts of stuff to him, spat at him and all this sort of shit. And he was like, it just wasn't true. And he said they got thrown out of Belgium, got told that they'll never play pro football in Belgium. The registrations was cancelled. They got sent home. I think there was like 18 and 19 at the time, something like that. He goes, so we're like, you get back to, I think it was the Cliff at the time. I think it was pre-Carrington days. I think it was like 1999. So it was just before Carrington. And he goes, you get back to the Cliff and they're like, go and wait in Fergie's office. And you're like, mate, we are going to get bollocked here, aren't we? Like, can you imagine the bollocking? You're thinking, you've dragged United's name through the mud. You've been banned for life. What am I going to do for a career? What am I going to do for a job? United are definitely going to fucking sack me. He goes, and we walked in and Fergie went, right, lads, 2 new contracts there for you. And they were like, what? And he said they'd spoke to some other people at the club who backed up their side of the story. And they went, don't know what the football referee's problem is. There's 2 contracts. Phone your parents, let them know, because they're probably worried. And he was like, honestly, he goes, like, Danny goes, you just fucking blew my mind. He goes, you expect one thing. He goes, because Fergie could be hard. And he goes, yeah, you just get the complete opposite. So that was, I'm sure it's like 2000, 99, 2001, somewhere around that sort of time. The relationship didn't end until 2005. Can you tell me what happened in 2005?
What, we signed quite average players.
What else happened in 2005?
Take over, innit?
The what?
Oh, the Blazers, yeah.
Yeah.
Glazers closed the league.
Right.
We had
What was
links with them and a couple of other clubs because it was costing us money.
Oh,
Because
right.
we was helping out with training costs and.
Wasn't Connors Key one, I think, in Wales?
I think we had about 5 or 6. What's Swedish team beginning with a Z?
Zellingborgs.
No.
No, that's not a team.
You just
Yeah.
guessed that.
Can't remember. It might not be a Swedish team, but there was a Scandinavian team. There was Antwerp. Sure, there was someone in Spain.
It's like Chelsea have got Vitesse, haven't they? They loan about 36 players out each season.
Yeah. I think it would be good. I'm not sure, entirely fucking up a league like they do with Vitesse is a good idea. But I think it'd be good if we had a team in the, that's decent that we could actually do something with.
Did you've got quite controversial opinions on B teams, haven't you? Because I remember you were saying that you wanted you'd be up for United having a B team in the English pyramid.
Yeah, I don't think it's a controversial opinion. Obviously, everyone else can if they want. I don't think it's a controversial opinion because I don't think United can be classified as the same as Chelsea, for instance, or City for definite. I know for a fact that if Manchester United were playing competitive football regularly in League One or League Two, United would probably produce 10,000 fans a week watching them, especially if we had a situation where we had a little stadium the same as City do on the site of Old Trafford.
Yeah,
we would be a very, very, very well followed B team if they were playing competitive football on a regular basis. You already see this with the FA Youth Cup. You already see this with some of the games in the latter stages of that we produce way more people come and watch that youth team than any other club. And we've obviously got the history to back that up as well. Can you just say, yeah, everyone go and get in the mix? No, because I think it would probably ruin the integrity of some competitions. What have you just said? If your club has had an academy graduate in the first team for 80 years, then you can have a B team. But would that be a fair?
Yeah, well, it depends. It's fair. It depends on how you do it. I mean, if you literally just do what you do on the editor on Football Manager when you want to put a new team in, and literally just take someone out,
just remove someone.
Yeah, we're now playing in League Two. It depends. I mean, if you start out like everyone else does, I think it'd be a bit. You get a sort of MK Don situation on your hands there, where you're taking the place of another team. There's a part of me that thinks it's a bit greedy, really, that United don't really need to have 2 teams when they already make quite a bit of income from the first team.
I don't understand the arguments against it. I'm going to be honest. Some of the arguments are it's hoarding players. Well, I disagree.
How's it hoarding players?
They're saying that if all the Premier League clubs, this is one of the arguments of League One and League Two clubs, that if those players weren't hoarded by Premier League clubs, then they would be on the market for those clubs to pick up as free transfers. I don't think that's the case, to be honest. I don't think that's really the case. They also complain about the amount of foreign children that are brought in at 15 and 16. Well, surely if those foreign children are brought in and everyone only has a squad of 25 in the Premier League under 18 level, that's making players available for you guys to pick up and develop yourselves. So I don't buy that argument. I can buy the argument that they wouldn't be well supported in some instances. I don't think that would be the case for United.
No.
And I can buy the argument of that it potentially devalues the league. But I could also, on the flip side of that, say that I think it brings more eyeballs to the league. Imagine Mason Greenwood had been playing League One last year. How many highlights and matches and stuff like that would you have seen of Mason Greenwood against different clubs? And I actually think it brings a lot of attention down to those leagues because they're good leagues. I don't do this as a Premier League only mindset. I think this is good for the whole game. I'm happy to be wrong on this, and obviously there's a lot more people with experience of the lower divisions than I have, but I think this would be something that was positive for the game. I don't think one size fits all. I don't think Crystal Palace B team is anywhere near as attractive as United's B team, but I do think there's something in another club. Maybe that's the long-term plan of Salford somehow.
Well, I think the reserves thing is interesting that they should probably sort out as well before that, because if you look at before, I mean, reserves football had a mixture of first team players and under 23s team, and it was a lot more competitive than, I mean, now on the under 23s league really doesn't, it doesn't suit its
Shite.
purpose.
Let's say it right, mate. It's shit.
Yeah,
Terrible. No one cares.
It doesn't really players going out on loan is a lot more for their experience than playing in a division where they're not physically challenged enough, and it's shit. Bottom line.
But the loan system also doesn't work. The loan system's of no use, because if I loan, I mean, look at Borthwick Jackson. He's had one successful loan in about 4 or 5 times that he's been out on loan. If you can keep them as a reserve team, they can play and learn the philosophy of your club, and you can manage their day-to-day development. If you have a player that goes on loan to, say, Exeter, well, he's not coming back to Manchester to join in with first-team training so you can keep an eye on a kid. You're hoping he goes to Exeter and develops, and you're hoping that the manager that's there at the start of the season will be there at the end of the season, and guess what? He won't be.
No.
And then you've got to deal with, this is some kid that this new guy is now under pressure because he's took over a team in trouble. I've just got to play game. I'm not fucking developing this kid. Fuck that noise. It's a broken system. And I'm not saying that just give United a B team in League One would fix it. I don't think it would. I think you're probably right. I think there's probably needs to be some sort of reward of that. Maybe United reserves going in like the Northern Prem. But I would imagine they absolutely wipe the floor with people at Northern Prem level. Could they compete at conference level? Again, conference level, is that taking away opportunities for teams to win the conference and to get into the playoffs of the conference to enter professional league football? Where do you limit them? Do you stop them playing in cups?
Did you read the thing in the Athletic about like United, the United youth players that were coming through and they're basically reaching a certain age and they just got released and had to find like normal jobs, and saying they've just got really bad like PTSD and that, and saying going out on loan doesn't work. So their technical ability they've got is far greater. And so they're just never going to be able to fit into the team. Yeah,
it's there's loads of arguments for and against the B team. Do you know? I think it was Real Madrid played their B team in a final of the Copa del Rey once.
Well, Castilla, yeah.
I remember that.
You remember it?
No, I remember seeing it.
It was like 1980.
I remember seeing it. Oh no, I do remember that. Yeah, I think I was there.
If you look at every league in Europe, I mean, they've all got it. And if you look at the structure, they've all pretty much got B teams. I mean, if you look at Spain, I mean, their Segunda division and their Segunda B is, you've got quite a few. You've got Barca B, you've got Real Madrid's Castilla side. In the Netherlands, you've got, young Ajax. If you look at, I mean, even in the States, I mean, they don't actually have promotion and relegation there. It's a bit different, but they've still got two teams or whatever they're called, and B teams playing in their structure somehow. So depends what your focus is on developing homegrown players or whether you want to have a more fluid system.
But the Spanish divisional system is just nothing like the English Football League system.
No,
I think it goes down
this is what I was going to say.
5 or 6 levels. The English football pyramid can go down 22 fucking levels. And at each level it multiplies because they're usually only feeder leagues into the ones above them. At like level 19 or 18 or something like that, there's like fucking 70 different regional divisions. You're like, why have they got a regional division? There's like no fucker there. And they're like, yeah, but we got 22 fucking local parish teams. And you're like, that's mental. It's insane. Yeah, hang on, Joe, I'm going to pull it up actually. Whoa, nearly not drink over then.
Have you ever done that on a Football Manager before, where you make like a database with every single league in England and then try
doing
and
it with Paddock at the minute?
Yeah.
We're in the Manchester League. Right, let's go all the way down to what's on Wikipedia. It goes down to level 20. You've got the Bristol and Avon League, the Central and South Norfolk Division 4, the Devon and Exeter Football League Division fucking 8, the Stroud, I don't even know where Stroud is, right? The Stroud and District League Division 7. Division 7! Where's Stroud? Don't know, but it's got enough to have 7 fucking divisions of football teams. The football pyramid in England is so fucking vast. Like, you can't compare it to Spain, where maybe a B team fits in. Like, yes, all right, you've got Barcelona, Atletico, and Real Madrid at the top of that are elite, like, top 15, top 10 world teams. The middle and the bottom half of the Spanish divisions are a bit fucking championship-ish level. And then the Segunda divisions Who the fuck knows?
There's still some really good teams though in the Segunda. I mean, if you look at the caliber of teams in there, you've got Deportivo La Coruña, you've got Zaragoza, Malaga. You've got some pretty big teams down there at the minute. It's not. I think after you get down to the likes of Segunda B and then you go down to Tercera, you get a bit more maybe of what you were saying. But I think Segunda's probably one of the strongest sort of second tier leagues in Europe.
I think obviously one of the problems is as well is that, like you're saying there, that with how stocked like the English football pyramid is, and there's a lot of pride in people that support like non-league teams. There's a lot of pride in people that support like League Two teams, and there's a lot of disparity between the support of the Premier League and even the Championship. If you end up with teams like United creating a B team and having it just plopped into, even if we look at like the sixth tier of English football, it's a bit like the rich kid having his family paid away into like the upper echelons of society and stuff, and it creates more of this discourse and this disparity between them. So I think it's a good idea. Like I agree with it. Like I think having a B team would be good, but again, it's how the situation's managed. And to be fair, I'd like to see him dropped into the 23rd tier of English football and see him playing against 45-year-old plumbers. Like
I think that as funny as it is, I don't think it'd be competitive. And I think it'd be an absolute waste of generations of United reserve players because they'd turn up like, what are we doing? Like, they're pretty well rewarded, pretty well paid. Quite a few of them, not all of them, but quite a few of them are heftily paid it. And to compare what level they'd be to even Northern Premier, like I don't know where an under-23s team actually lies. What the true level of the average under-23 team would be. Is it conference? Pretty fucking good conference teams. Yeah. With some experience, championship players.
It depends. I mean, if you put them in a Northern Premier side and they get the shit kicked out of them on a muddy pitch in, I don't know, Droylsden or wherever, it's not the same, is it? So they probably won't play as well, but it's a lot more physical down at that level. I mean, they've probably got more technical ability, but they're probably suited to playing under-23s football more just because it's just a bit less intense, and that's probably how you can feed them into the first team.
Well, that's the issue is that under-23s football is not intense. It's very vanilla, I think is the word you would use, or beige. Like a lot of these kids have been in academies since they was 8 years old, and it's the same age. It's the same, like you might be lining up against another kid and today he's wearing a City kit, but 2 years ago he was wearing an Everton kit. It's the same kids playing against the same kids on the same pitches. There's no step in development. There's no testing of them. That's why the A-leagues, when they would play against the likes of Marine and Camel Laird and people like that, they'd get a fucking shit kicked out of them at the right time. They might go and have Gary Neville and David Beckham playing there at 17 years of age, but maybe Mal Donaghy, Clayton Blackmore and Brian Robson was also in the fucking team as well. And this is international players coming back from injuries that are helping guide these lads through. So there has to be a balance. There needs to be a redress. Under 23s was stupid anyway. That was Scudamore brought that in a few years ago because he said the average age of people making their Premier League debut is 23. So for that reason, we need to up the reserve leagues. If you're 23 at United and you've come all the way through the youth system and you haven't fucking played a single fucking first team game, guess what, son? It ain't happening for you. At 23, go
How old was Lingard when he made his debut?
Lingard was younger than that, but he'd also played league football. Like he was as a fresh debut at 23. That's fucking stupid. At 23, I mean, Mason Green was 17, Angel Gomez was 16. He's got 7 and 8 years experience on a 23-year-old. At 23, Nicky Butt, David Beckham, Gary Neville, all that, them guys were on the cusp of winning the treble. These were at the top of their game. Pretty much, you're 98% of your peak at 24 years of age. 98% of your highest resale value at that age. What the fuck are you doing playing under 23 football at that age? I don't know about other clubs, I can't comment, but if you're 23 at United, you'd be like, anytime soon, gonna get the fucking nod. You're not, mate. You're not.
Will Keane's a good example of that, isn't he? I mean, he sort of played around the reserves a bit, made his debut against, I can't remember, was it Derby in the FA Cup, got injured, and then that was him, gone.
Will Keane was one of the most natural, like him, James Wilson, just purely inexplicable what happened to them lads. Yes. And that's why you have to test them in a first-team environment to find out whether they can sink or swim. Because if you're testing them out in under-23 football where they look amazing, you never know whether they can make the jump. Marcus made the jump better than anyone I've seen in a long time. Mason Greenwood's right up there behind him in terms of like Mason's got one of the most managed transitions from academy to first team I've ever seen. They're drip feeding him in. It's almost perfect. You know, he's not looking burnt out. You're not questioning him when he comes. He scored 12 fucking goals. If we'd have started at the start of the season, Marcus has never scored that, I don't think, has he? Prior to this season.
No.
I think 10 might have been his most prior to this. If you're sitting there going, hey, tell you what, Mason Greenwood this season is going to get 12 goals, you'd have been like, put the glue down. That's not happening. But there we go, 12 goals, and he's got potentially 18 games of the season left. He's not going to play all of those, but would you bet against him getting over 15?
No.
I wouldn't bet against him getting over 15 goals, which is fucking ridiculous because you barely notice him in the squad. He's been so well managed. I think we should leave it there. While we're on a relative football related topic. Anything anyone else has got before we do go?
No, not really.
Any documentaries, anything you're reading, anything that you want to get off your chest?
I'm actually just saying. I'm reading another good book at the minute. Actually, I finished it now. It's about the called Rock and Roll Soccer, all about the North American Soccer League in the 70s, and basically they put all these like new rule changes in. But it was just like mental. It's also like the Cosmos, for example. They're owned by like Warner and the big like music company, and they had like cheerleaders like sat on the subs bench and that sort of thing. And there were all these like massive orgies going on in hotels and that sort of thing. And like there was like Mick Jagger was involved in one of the sides. There was like all this like mad shit going on, and it only lasted for like 8 years. And then the league went bankrupt because no one could afford to keep spending all this money.
They took over some right stars as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
Obviously, George Best was one. Dennis Violet was over there for a while.
Pele's the obvious one.
Yeah, Pele was out there. I'm trying to think. There was like Bobby Moore went out there, I think.
Yeah, for a bit. You had Alan Ball as well. He just won a World Cup. You had Canaglia, who'd been playing for Juventus. You had a lot of big names playing out there. And I mean, for a few years, I mean, they did a few interesting things. Like they had the American style shootouts, which were like from the 35-yard line, and they put in like an offside line that was like 35 yards. They got rid of back passes. They put like names on the back of the shirts, did that sort of thing. But they had loads of like big FIFA, and it was actually FIFA that kind of ended it because they gave the World Cup to Mexico, and instead of the US, and then they just couldn't keep on funding it after that, and everyone just walked off. So
when it came back in the, I think late 90s when it came back again, was it? It didn't feel like it was big, and we touched on it before, didn't we, with Beckham going over there? But I think Beckham going over there was one of the massive legitimizing points of the MLS in this second sort of era. And since then, it does actually seem to have gone quite serious. Now there's what I would call proper fan groups and proper clubs out there that, even though they're new, like LAFC, obviously set up in opposition to LA Galaxy, but they seem like they've got a bit of a rebel nature about them, and they've got safe standing. They've got, I can't remember the name of the section that they've got. Is it the Bank Vault or something like that? Because I think the stadium's called the Bank something or other in it.
California Stadium, yeah.
Yeah, so they've got, I think the Bank Vault or something like that is the name of where their ultra section is. And they seem to have it like proper style. So I think it's here to stay in America.
Well, it's the opposite of the NASL. I mean, the NASL, which was the old league, achieved what the MLS has done in 6 years in terms of attendance figures, in terms of a big TV deal, but it wasn't sustainable, which is why we're never going to see the Cosmos back in the MLS, because it's the complete opposite of what the MLS stands for with its single entity structure and the way you get a franchise in. But also that has its negatives because it's been almost too nice. I mean, they call it sort of soccer socialism, where you've got a salary cap and you've got a draft and everything, but then actually
it's anti-American as fuck.
Yeah, basically. It just reduces the quality of football then, because everyone's sort of average then, so you don't get a one team that breaks away that everyone hates, that everyone supports, but then it's a difficult balancing act.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. I would love to see them open it up and do a more European style promotion relegation tiered thing, because I think they could do it. Yeah, but I don't think the college system's perfect over there.
If the teams below them aren't good enough to play in the MLS, they'll just end up getting relegated back down again. That's the problem. And you've also got another whole thing with investors pulling out if that happens, and it's way more complicated than just opening up a relegation thing then, because the whole league gets affected then.
I think that would be a development I'd like to see, though. because obviously then you can expand it even more. I mean, some of them states are the size of England, aren't they?
Yeah, well,
With one team.
It's them in the A League in Australia that are the only leagues in the world without promotion or relegation.
Yeah. I think there'll be that many teams wanting to take part soon. It'll probably end up happening in 10 years or so when they're just like, look, there's too many teams. Here's MLS 2.
There's already 26 teams I think in there at the minute, with Inter Miami joining, and I think it was Cincinnati last season.
They're split into opposite conferences, aren't they?
Yeah,
So it's still only like whatever in a league. Yeah. All right then. Cheers for tuning in, everyone. Make sure to subscribe. Stay safe during lockdowns. Make sure you're washing your fucking hands and stay inside, you dicks. Don't be going out. Otherwise, look, here's the thing, right? If you go out, you're not clever. You just mean everyone else stays in lockdown longer, you tosser. So stay inside, wash your hands, stay safe. I'll see you in the next one. Laters.